Welcome to this HRD podcast. We are joined today by Kathryn Kernick from the Centre for Creative Leadership. Kathryn, what work has the Centre for Creative Leadership done recently on stress and leadership?
Well, essentially, we've actually just published a new book. So my colleague, senior faculty member Nick Petrie, has co-authored a new book, and it's called Work Without Stress, with Dr. Derek Roger, who founded the Stress Research Unit at the University of York. And he's an individual that's been researching the causes and effects of stress for about the last 30 years. So we're very excited about the publication of this new book.
What are the biggest myths about stress?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think one myth is that stress is something you have to learn to live with. And our research shows that that's absolutely not the case. And I suppose the second big myth really would be that stress is good for us. And again, it's not. So stress is not, there is no kind of good stress, if you like. That's what our research is telling us.
What is a smarter way to think about stress?
I think we need a shift in the paradigm of what we think stress is. And instead of focusing on stress and how to manage it, we need to focus instead on developing resilience. So you can see that stress, if you can see stress for what it is, I suppose, and choose not to become involved in it. So to do that, we really need to distinguish between what we would call stress and pressure, and not turn pressure into stress.
What turns pressure into stress?
A good question, yeah. So pressure is not stress in itself. It's simply the demand to perform, if you like. So it's about that external demand and the environment, and there is no stress inherent in it at all. And most people working in organizations today have pressure, but pressure doesn't equal stress. So if I take it a step further, pressure becomes stress through what we describe as rumination. And that's essentially dwelling on emotional upsets, thinking over and over about events in the past or future, and, importantly, attaching a negative emotion to it. So instead of accepting whatever has happened and moving on as positively as possible. So it's that rumination. It's thinking through the past, the future, and attaching negative emotion to it. So what we found is people who ruminate, who don't ruminate, don't get stressed. Okay, so the good news is that rumination is not genetic in any way, and it's a habit that we can all change. So what we would say from our research and working with leaders, as we have been doing for the last 40 plus years, avoiding rumination is the fundamental key to developing resilience.
What are 4 ways to avoid rumination?
Okay, so again, from the research that's gone into the book that we've put together, Work Without Stress, there are 4 ways really. The first step is to avoid rumination. Okay, so to avoid that rumination, the first step is about waking up. So we all spend a tremendous amount of time in what we describe or can be described as waking sleep, if you like. So waking sleep is not intentional. It's when our mind wanders into the past or the future. So waking sleep then can be transformed into rumination when negative emotion is added. So waking up is essentially about being in the present moment and attending to what you are facing in the here and now. Okay, so that's the first way. And once you are awake, if you like, attention becomes available for you to use intentionally. So what you're aiming to do is to turn rumination into reflection. So reflecting in a positive or neutral way rather than ruminating and essentially making yourself stressed. So the third area, so having woken up and then you've regained control of attention, the next step is to become detached. So detachment in this context means being able to maintain perspective, so diffusing potentially challenging situations by getting a sense of perspective. If you like, stepping back from a situation. And this isn't about being disengaged or not caring. Really, actually, it's quite the opposite. You can only reflect once you've become detached. So to really care requires detachment. Okay, and the final area is what we would describe as letting go. So it's the final way to avoid rumination. So let things flow. It's about letting things flow without attaching to any of it. So tasks typically come wrapped in emotion, and what you need to do is let go of that wrapping, essentially let go of the negative emotion. To go back across those 4 areas, so to recap, we need to wake up, we need to control our attention, we need to become detached, and we need to let go. And then we'll be well on our way to being less stressed and more resilient.
How do people act if they are skilled in resilience?
Well, obviously, I'm going to talk through some of the things that we've already talked about, but essentially they understand the difference between pressure and stress. and they accept that pressure is a natural part of having a good job, working in an organization. So understanding that pressure is there and that's natural and we're all going to experience that, but stress really is chosen. So it's really about a fundamental mind shift for a lot of people. It's the realization that they have a choice and not to be a victim of stress. So that's the first empowering area, I suppose, of understanding. And really what they focus on as leaders with their team, they focus on what they and their team control or have influence over, and not to ruminate around those things where they have no control.
What are the actions of people who are not skilled in resilience?
So really it's individuals who are constantly thinking about the what ifs and if onlys without even realizing it. That's the we talked about the waking sleep. It's not even realizing that's going on in your head, if you like. So those individuals imagine events to be much more bigger and more consequential than they really are. For example, they ruminate about other people, what other people might be thinking of them as a leader. And really, if a leader is not resilient, this can have a significant impact on them as an individual, but also on their teams. So habitual rumination in leaders will significantly compromise a team's productivity and happiness. And that's why I think it needs to be paid attention to as a leader in particular.
And finally, what is the role of leaders in helping their people avoid stress?
I think stress can be no more than rumination, but if leaders behave negatively, so if they start to blame their team members or other individuals, that pressure then starts to become, and I suppose, be transformed into stress for others around you as well. So I think that the broader view here is around how organizations are working currently. Resilience is a really big area. I mean, we're all experiencing extremely high levels of stress in the workplace. Organizations are trying to do more with less, and employees' workloads are getting higher with no end in sight. So it's not going to go away. So actually, in terms of the impact to organizations, actually enabling people to understand that stress is chosen and that pressure will always be there will hopefully make a happier environment, but also a more productive environment for leaders and individuals in organizations.
Thank you for joining us today, Kathryn. The Centre for Creative Leadership will be joining us at the HRD Summit. For more information on speakers, please visit hrdsummit.com.